Assalamu alaikum, welcome back brothers and sisters to one of our other al-Hajj nights as we ponder over the verses of the Quran. Again, we're blessed to have Imam Baytullah to recite for us with his beautiful Anatolian voice of the 4th page of Surah al-Hajj. Tafaddal Ustadi.
Even it's mixed of everything because the people sometimes they do that observation. They say it's mixed of the Anatolian, Kurdish, Arabic. Since I lived in Antioch, so
In different countries.
in different countries, so there is different, and Spanish as well. So
In English, no.
Alhamdulillah, may Allah benefit us from the Quran, especially in the Surah al-Hajj, Ya Rabbana, in these 10 days. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وهدوا إلى الطيب من القول وهدوا إلى صراط الحميد إن الذين كفروا ويصدون عن سبيل الله والمسجد الحرام الذي جعلناه للناس سواء العاكف فيه والباد ومن يرد فيه بإلحاد بظلم نذقه من عذاب أليم وإذ بوأنا لإبراهيم مكان البيت ألا تشرك بي شيئا وطهر بيتي للطائفين والقائمين والركع السجود وأذن في الناس بالحج يأتوك رجالا وعلى كل ضامر يأتين من كل فج عميق ليشهدوا منافع لهم ويذكروا اسم الله في أيام معلومات على ما رزقهم من بهيمة الأنعام فكلوا منها وأطعموا البائس الفقير ثم ليقضوا تفثهم وليؤفوا نذورهم وليطوفوا بالبيت العتيق ذلك ومن يعظم حرمات الله فهو خير له عند ربه وأحلت لكم الأنعام إلا ما يتلى عليكم فاجتنبوا الرجس من الأوثان واجتنبوا قول الزور صدق الله العظيم.
Jazakallah khairan. Shaykh Yusuf, mashallah, another few powerful verses. Let's begin, inshallah. Thank you to Shaykh Baytullah for his recitation. They have been guided to believe in and declare the purest of words, and they have been guided to the path of the all-praiseworthy one, saying and doing only what is praiseworthy. We were discussing before, and we both said this verse, it's very short, but the sound of it, just a reminder to our brothers and sisters that we're only snorkeling, we're only on the surface, but sometimes you come across a verse and you don't even see the bottom of the ocean. I think this one is one of them. At-tayyib min al-qawl, there's been Shaykh Yusuf different interpretations given. Some have said it's La ilaha illallah, And there's verse of the Quran, مثلا كلمة طيبة إليه يصعد الكلم الطيب. So, but they were guided. It's past tense. See, the past tense, and it's just come from a very beautiful Jannah description of Jannah. And the last page, subhanAllah, after that our discussion, I realized these hellfire imagery is very strong.
Yes.
But then Allah gives us some relief.
Yes.
And this وَهُدُوا إِلَى الطَّيِّبِ مِنَ الْقَلِ وَهُدُوا إِلَى الصِّرَاطِ الْحَمِيدِ. Just the sounds is a bit more, much more soothing and calming. Allahumma ja'alna minhum.
Amen.
May Allah make us hear this. And Sirat al-Hamid, it could be taken as God's path, but Him being the all praiseworthy one. And he, Shaykh Ali Una, translates it as, in brackets he puts in, by virtue of which saying and doing only what is praiseworthy. But this is Allah's Sirat. Or it could be As-Sirat al-Hamid, but the Alif Lam is sort of not there, meaning a praiseworthy or the praiseworthy path. So and his translation sort of encapsulates both meanings. And this is again a reminder to our brothers and sisters that if you want to read a translation, you're really reading one person's interpretation.
One of the Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. One of the things that is mentioned in al-Mawsu' al-Qur'aniyya, which is Quranic encyclopedia, mostly composed by the scholars of Sham or Damascus or Syria in general. One of the things that they mention is that they were guided by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to Jannah and to good speech in which طيب من القول here they're making it to be the praise of Allah. That's one of the angles that they're taking, and to assent to acknowledge, to be clear on Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala's fadl, blessings and goodness that is outpoured on the believers. But another interesting tie-in that they bring in is this idea of al-bu'd and al-laghu. And al-laghu as a concept comes up in other areas of the Quran. That especially in Surah al-Mu'minun. Is one of the qualities of the believers. Yes. And so
how would we translate laghu?
Laghu, that's one of the things that I was going to bring up, that laghu, many translations, even from Arabic to Arabic, it's a rejection of that speech that has no benefit in it. But some of the scholars add that there's even action, right? That the believers, when they reject the laghu, they're rejecting that speech and action which has no benefit.
Yes.
And the thing here that is...
because there's a hadith in Jummah, even if you play with stones while you're listening to the khatib,
yes,
that's considered as laghu.
Yes.
Like you said, actions. That's right.
So that's a beautiful reminder that the Quran and the Sunnah, it interprets each other, and it clarifies and gives nuances. But one of the things that comes up to the fore is this reality that this is brought up after an intense scenario of what the fire of hell is like. That the believer in the dunya, and the believer in this short time period or this non-permanent existence, we don't last forever here in this realm of existence, that they have a clear path. They're not confused, and they're in this process of maintaining themselves on this sirat or this path, and it has a lot to do with this. It has a lot to do with rejecting that which is harmful, and at the end realizing what is the benefit of having abstained in the dunya. Now remember that in this surah, one of the things that's brought up is the issue of libas al-taqwa, as opposed to the wearing of silk in the dunya, because some people will say, well, why would silk be something that is prohibited to you? It's beautiful, this, that. But some of the scholars, they bring up the point that Surah al-Hajj is teaching us is zuhud, is teaching us to do without in the dunya. Not necessarily that we don't enjoy the good things of the dunya, but our hearts are not attached.
Yeah.
And so that specific thing of not wearing silk in the case of men is a point, or not using ornamentation of silver, you know what I'm saying, vessels of silver and gold and these types of things, is to avoid the extravagance. So in my reflection,
as opposed to in Jannah,
because in Jannah those things will be without the boundary for us.
Yeah,
the good will be without boundary for us. It's not that Allah is prohibiting us to enjoy good in the dunya. Is that Allah doesn't want us to become attached to this impermanent reality.
Yeah.
And so then it's mentioned that they were guided, to that which is good, and is like, it's almost like saying, well, everybody had that opportunity, but Iman is what took the believers to a safe route, whereas those that chose to disbelieve, they harmed themselves, and they went a path of destruction.
But it immediately follows the last verse of the previous page, which is talking about the Jannah, and like you said, the Harir and the beauties. But it's counting the blessings of this world in a way, in the same context as if it's like a blessing of Jannah.
Yes.
Although it's in the past tense, it's in this world, the kalima. Yes. And going back to what you said about laghu, I think that's a very thing, because I know Surah Waqia, one of the most beautiful descriptions of paradise, I love it, is that La yasma'una fiha laghwa wa la ta'thima.
Yes. They
don't hear vain speech and not sinful speech. And not hearing those things in this world is like a source of Jannah as well.
It is.
And to hear good things, at-tayyib min al-qawl, like dhikr, Allah's names. And that's why I think there's a hadith, like, when you pass by the meadows of the garden, take a portion from it, So if you pass by gatherings of zikr and where Allah's name or the Quran is mentioned, take benefit from it. But it's almost like it's one of an occasion where the lifestyle on earth is being displayed as a blessing, as a cause or as an effect or as a parallel to the blessings of paradise.
Well, that's a beautiful point. That's exactly the parallel concept. It takes us back to the fact that the idea that there are two adversaries who have disputed about who Allah or about Allah.
Yeah.
And that's the believers and the unbelievers, right? And then those who have disbelieved, that they have cut out for themselves garments of the fire. So then, after the description of those who have disbelieved, what they have brought to themselves, and that's clothing is protection. Clothing is protection, is ornamentation. How they have, what they have sought out of protection and how they have ornamented their lives is that they plunge themselves into self-destruction, right? And then, from there, the description of the hellfire comes. Then this point comes about the reality of the believers and the description of Jannah, and then the reality that they were guided in this world.
And Sheikh Yusuf, when we're reading the Quran, our interaction is meant to be interactive and dynamic. Can we sometimes make dua? I've seen some scholars, when they read a verse, they stop. When we read a verse like this, Allahumma hidina ila tayyib min al-qawli, Allahumma hidina ila sirat al-hamid.
Yes.
Oh Allah, guide us to this word that you praise and guide us to your path. But maybe we can also add, Allahumma ihdi bina ila tayyib min al-qawli wa ihdi bina ila sirat al-hamid. Let's move on, inshallah. Now, verse number 25. Those who disbelieve and bar others from God's way.
Yeah, that was a tough one, yes.
And the believers from visiting the sacred mosque, which we have set up as a place of worship for all believing people alike, both for those who dwell therein in Mecca and for those who come from abroad. Whoever seeks a deviation from the right course therein by deliberate wrongdoing, we cause him to taste a painful punishment. And we're moving on now. and the Hajj and the Masjid al-Haram is mentioned for the first time in this surah, what this surah is based on. And those who disbelieve, and then we won't go too much into the Arabic because there's a few things we can discuss, but I think we'll leave that for a more in-depth study. For example, وَيَصُدُّونَ, the wow, some have said is ziyada or not. We won't go into that. But yeah, so they're barring people from the Masjid al-Haram. And then the oneness of humanity straight away comes up when Hajj comes up. That it's for everyone, regardless of whether in Mecca, al-Akif, it's being used, itikaf, but here means Akif, the one in Mecca, or from the outside. But then it gets, and whoever wishes, and it doesn't really says, like the maf'ul bihi is not mentioned here. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ فِيهِ, doesn't say it. Although some have said bi-ilhadim is like the maf'ul bihi, and whoever seeks in it with some sort of disbelief, and some I looked up, some have said this could mean shirk, some said it could mean some specific individuals who'd come up who'd done irtidad, or for various reasons went back and sought refuge as a non-Muslim in Mecca. You know, and some have said this could also mean a person in a state of ihram, killing animals. But I read this one sentence, to be honest, just before this one sentence for Fakhruddin Razi. I really loved it. I highlighted, لا وجه للتخصيص إذا أمكن التعميم. I think that's a golden principle of tafsir. There's no point in restricting the meaning of something if it's possible for us to read it generically. So it could basically, it could include everything, the smallest or the biggest.
I was going to ask, how do you simplify that meaning?
I'll simplify about any, because it's saying now we're talking about a holy place. وظلم, يعني any small thing in Masjid al-Haram is like a kabira.
Yes.
Just like, in Ramadan, but anything small there, so everything is, and it's tough words are being used. Ilhad wa dhulm.
Yes.
And they're used together. Bi-ilhadim bi-dhulmin.
Yeah, the ilhad part is to incline away. Right? And then here, this ayat that you just mentioned, وَمَنْ يُرِدْ فِيهِ بِالْحَادِ. The idea comes back to inclining away from the truth. And then we have later on
so you're saying it's not the terminological meaning that comes in our minds, which means to leave the religion absolutely. It could mean any inclination away from the truth.
Well, I'm not going to say, ilhad has that meaning. Ilhad, or some today, they at times try to make it an equivalent for atheism.
That's right.
Right? They try to say, but atheism, materialistic, secular atheism, is not the type of atheism that you see dominant in the time of Jahiliyyah when the Quran is being revealed.
No.
Because they believe in idols.
No.
I don't want to get into that too deeply, but I just wanted to get to the point that there is an indication of the state of the heart here, right? That is inclining away from the truth and the path that is sound, that leads to benefit of the self in this world and in the year after. Which is and then later on the Quran talks about in the same surah, هُنَفَاء لِلَّهِ غَيْرُ مُشْرِكِينَ. And that's those that are inclining to Allah. They have acceptance. Right here, first is the issue of مَقْبُلِينَ, عَلَى الْحَقِّ. Those people, they're open to it. And they're predisposed to it, and they're accepting.
Yeah.
Right? And then they incline at the same. Here's the opposite scenario. Here is those that they're rejecting, and they're inclining in a way to truth. I mean, against truth, towards falsehood.
That's right.
But then the point that you mentioned, I think, is very important to contextualize here. That here in Surah al-Hajj, from what I gather in some of the reflections of the scholars and just pondering, the house of Tawheed, right? It's called the house. It's called the house. It's a place where you're supposed to be in comfort. It's a place where you're supposed to be free from worry, and you're safe and so on and so forth. But it's also a place of purity. The Kaaba is supposed. The Kaaba represents that reality of purity of worship for Allah, sincerity of intention. Then when you bring up the point that it's a sanctuary, it's a place in which even the intending to do wrong is accounted for in a different way that if we were in another space. So Surah al-Hajj and just Hajj itself as a rukn, as a pillar, this is taking us to a complete understanding of the practice of the deen. That it's encompassing inner and outer, is encompassing the state of our hearts and the actions that we engage in, our speech, our character, our relationships, and how in reality we're taking into account for our intention. Are we intending for Allah? And what is, and the demand, the demand of Tawheed here is that, where our intention is for no other purpose other than Allah. Not for shirk, not for our own benefit. That we're being called to a high station.
And that's exactly how the next verse, because it says, remember, verse 26, remember we assigned to Abraham the site of the house, Kaaba, as a place of worship, directing him, do not associate any partners with me in any way, and keep my house pure, in brackets, from any material and spiritual filth, close brackets, for those who will go around it in devotion, and those who will stand in prayer before it, and those who will bow down and prostrate themselves in worship. And the connecting verse after that, publicly proclaim the duty of pilgrimage for all humankind, that they come to you on foot and on lean camels, coming from every far away point.
And that's the opposite of the reality of Mecca, in which the people disbelief, they didn't allow an environment in which the praise of Allah can be made clear and in the open.
It was basically, from what I'm getting from you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this house as a symbol of purity. And it's the ultimate manifestation of purity, both in worship but also in ikhlas of the intention of the servants. But he juxtaposes that with the Qurayshes, and also it's a universal thing. Everyone is the same here. All human beings, they're like the teeth of a comb in this place. But the Quraysh and the Mecca are doing the opposite. They made it with ilhadin bi-dhulmin, with the heart's impurity, but they're also preventing others from coming in, and distinguishing between, differentiating between human beings, making groups.
This is an important point that you're bringing up, that there's levels of disbelief. Here the example is given of a group that's not just disbelieving, but they're opposing those who want to embrace belief. They're an active force.
And they're doing two things. They're opposing them from belief. وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. And it looks like normally it's وَيَصُدُّونَ عَنْ they're stopping people from believing, and they're spending to stop. But here the Masjid al-Haram is being given sort of almost the same status of preventing the belief or Allah's path, but also preventing Masjid al-Haram. So it's got a very pronounced...
Yes. And this point that you bring up, it sparks some connections with our father Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. That's exactly what he went through in his own community, with his own family, that they prevented belief from manifesting itself. And so then the Kaaba itself was a rejection of all of that and an embrace of Tawheed. It was a space in which the conditions allow for Tawheed to manifest itself. And it's really sad in the sense that some of his descendants, because Quraysh, they try to tie back into his lineage, that they were the ones that took the Kaaba into shirk, or into disbelief and idolatry, and then they didn't want Tawheed to be manifested and proclaimed in action and in speech. And so then you can tie that back in, that the believers يعني وهدوا إلى الطيب من القول وهدوا إلى صراط الحميد. Right, that the believers were guided to the right path, or to that straight path of speech and action, which is reflective of Tawheed.
This verse, we know Hajj is all about Ibrahim alayhi salam, our mother Hajar, and we know the stories and all that. But I read somewhere in the tafsir of Juzay, but anyway, I don't want to quote things, but it's been mentioned there. So if it's not an authentic thing, it says that even when he made this adhaan, Ibrahim alayhi salam, even the mountains and the rocks responded to him saying, Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik. Waqila, and that says from there it's been instituted this talbiyah, that Ibrahim alayhi salam is pronouncing it, but perhaps one opinion was that even all the souls of those who were going to perform Hajj heard it and sort of said Labbaik, even though they were in there.
But if you notice like that here, the translation is, do you not see that to Allah prostrates whoever is in the heavens and whoever is on the earth, and the sun and the moon, the stars, the mountains, the trees, the moving creatures, and many of the people. But upon many the punishment has been justified, and he whom Allah humiliates, for him there is no bestower of honor. Indeed, Allah does what he wills. There's this constant emphasis placed on the idea that this belief is not from the natural order of affairs.
That's right.
That the whole of the creation is one big testimony to La ilaha illallah.
Yeah. Just envision Ibrahim alayhi salam being in a place like that, making this call. And if you look at it with a view of belief, you'll say, oh my God, humanity afterwards going to respond. If you look at it from view of disbelief, you're like, Hasha, what's this man doing calling out? There's no one there. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us hear it by mentioning this verse. Let's quickly continue. Verse number 28. So that they may witness all the spiritual, social, and economic benefits, or they witness all the benefits in store for them, and offer during the known appointed days the sacrificial cattle that He has provided for them, by pronouncing God's name over them, eat of their meat, and feed the distressed, the poor. We're seeing pretty much the Qurban being instituted again by this verse, connecting it. But also to witness the benefits. Normally the tafsirs usually mention the tijara, the worldly benefits. But because there's no tamyiz, or there's no specific word, we can definitely include all benefits. And what are the words?
And then Hajj itself is the reality is that Hajj itself is a leaving behind of seeking out the benefit of the dunya. Leaving behind family, leaving behind.
But to a certain extent, it has been allowed to do a bit of tijara, and so that because in the past,
right, and that's the philosophy of spirituality in Islam, is that it doesn't negate the world.
It doesn't negate. Yeah.
This is a world-affirming religion.
Yeah.
There are world-denying religions. They deny the body a space. They deny pleasure. They deny the good things.
Yeah.
And that's just a sign that, yes, Allah still, allows for procuring a material benefit.
And we see this with the Salatul Jummah,
Yes.
فَإِذَا قُضِيَتِ الصَّلَاةُ فَانْتَشِرُوا وَابْتَغُوا, seek Allah's. It's interesting that many worship acts in our religion are connected with straight away work, and
yes,
that combined view you were talking about.
I think here we come to an end.
Just 2 verses left. Thereafter, let them tidy themselves by having, in brackets, their haircut, removing their ihram, hajj attire, taking a bath, clipping their nails. This is all brackets. And fulfill the vows. And go around the most ancient, honorable house in devotion. And to finish it, verse 30. All that is what has God ordained concerning the hajj. So whoever venerates God's sanctities will find it to be the best for him in his Lord's sight. Cattle will be made lawful for you for sacrifice and food, except what has already been mentioned to you as unlawful. So shun the loathsome evil of idol worship, and shun all words of falsehood. In brackets, never say or consider or legislate anything contrary to revealed commandments concerning the lawful and the unlawful.
Yeah, and we have to remember that the whole idea of the sacrifice and so on and so forth, we have to recall the relationship between Ibrahim and his son.
Yes.
Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had commanded him to sacrifice that which he loved. You know, it was miraculous to be able to have a child at his age and under those conditions. And then that sacrifice is a representation that, you know, that even though he was commanded to sacrifice his own son, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala was looking at the reality of where his heart was at. Didn't command him to go fully through with a human sacrifice, right? But that intention to sacrifice for Allah opened up the door for the blessings of Allah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, for him to get continual reward and even material gain, because, you know, the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, or animal, you know, we eat from it. We take benefit, we take our provision from it.
And I mentioned the previous, eat from there, but give it to the distressed and the poor.
Yes.
Both of them mentioned there. Actually, you're right, that mentioned. Sheikh Yusuf, just as we finish, just two things occurred to me right now. Look at how the page begins and how it ends. At-tayyib min al-qawl.
Yes.
And the last one, wajtanibu qawl az-zur.
Yes, yes. The munasabat, the relationships between the beginning of a section and the end of a section here, yes, it's amazing.
It's amazing, but also, like, you know, you were talking about the purity of how the house was built. Bayt al-Atiq, Tawheed. So fajtanibu ar-rijsa anil awthani.
Yes.
Stay away from these impurities of these idols.
Yes.
And equally stay away from false witnessing, false testimonies, false oaths. And, you know, we were saying that this world is like a reflection of what we're going to get in the hereafter, because if we're guided. But then we got to ask ourselves, what's the akhlaq when it comes to speech?
Yes.
How much falsity is contained in our speech, and how much truth is it? We can't have a life where qawl az-zur is mixed. Because to witness Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shahadat haqq, there must also be qawl al-haqq and at-tayyib min al-qawl, as opposed to shahadat az-zur or qawl az-zur, false testimony. And unfortunately, as Muslims, this is something we need to, in all parts of the world.
And even economy economy is based on trust.
Yeah.
Family is based on trust. You know, earlier I was thinking about this while we were reflecting that the Quran is telling us these things, is mentioning to us these scenarios. Sometimes we can't get the grasp of it because the Quran will tie in one concept with another concept, and they may seem unrelated. But to build out on that reality of the issue of importance of character, this is I think the benefit of writing and the arts, you know, film and so on and so forth. And you know, when you have good writing, you can see like a family that is built on lies and mistrust and deception. And there's some people that have created a whole set of scenarios around that. And what is the outcome of that? Recently, I was watching a film that was like that, and it was just, the family was completely imploded because of the way that they lied to each other, the false promises, the manipulation, you know, the lack of sincerity, of purity of intention. And so sometimes we need that to tie in these realities of Quran and use the arts to really kind of think about what is the Quran telling us.
Yeah,
you know,
I really like your point. The arts and all that should be a reflection of the finest ethics and a promoter of those. Maybe we can finish with a dua. Allahumma ja'alna min alladhina yajtanibuna ar-rijza min al-awthani walladhina yajtanibuna qawl az-zur. Ameen. Allahumma waffiqna lahadha. Jazakum Allahu khairan.
Barakallahu feekum.